When a crime occurs, one would expect whoever's investigating it to comb through the crime scene looking for any clues or fingerprints that they could find. So when the DNC's emails and files were famously leaked online last year, you would expect a top-notch forensic investigation by the nation's top experts. But what we've seen instead has been a cursory, almost lackadaisical approach, with investigators who've never seen the servers quickly summing up their findings in one word: Russia. The group Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity, however, did take a closer look recently and found that the actual evidence, if any, proves that the infamous Guccifer 2.0 was in no way a Russian hacker, but had actual physical access to the DNC servers. We spoke with former CIA analyst and VIP spokesperson Ray McGovern, and here is what he had to tell us.
Well, we don't want to conflate two things. The way that WikiLeaks got their information on the DNC emails was from a separate copy, not a hack, okay? Copy, leak, put it on a thumb drive, give it to Julian Assange. We know that's what happened, okay? Now, this other thing was a construct, was a synthetic thing, which was arranged by this very shadowy person or entity called Guccifer 2.0. And sure enough, as soon as they heard from Julian Assange himself that he had emails, as he put it, pertaining to Hillary Clinton, that was on the 12th of June last year, they got busy saying, oh my God, what does he have? If he has enough, he can prove that we stole the election from Bernie Sanders, pure and simple. Huh? So what are we gonna do? And the idea was, well, let's preempt it. Let's dig up a scheme here where we can blame this on the Russians, and then we can distract attention from the content of these emails. You know, why did the Russians do this? What did the Russians do? Okay, work like a charm. Now, the evidence that we have now is forensic, okay? Now, you would wonder why the FBI didn't do forensics.
Yeah.
It's a big mystery. You would wonder why the people composing that CIA, FBI, NSA document on the 6th, released on the 6th of January, didn't do any forensics, but they didn't do anything.
That's the logical thing that you would do in any crime, is that you do the forensic analysis of the crime itself.
You would maybe look at the crime scene, at least. Somewhere where the crime scene happened.
If you watch James Comey, you know, testifying before the House Intelligence Committee, Senate Intelligence Committee, they asked him about this, and he said, well, he said, I recognize, yes, it's far better to get direct access to these things and to do your own forensic. That's obviously, but we didn't do that. And nobody says, well, hey, people are saying this is an act of war by Russia, and you didn't do this? Right. And he says, no, we didn't do it. Well, what happened was, after Julian Assange announced that he had emails relating to Hillary Clinton, on the 12th, that was on the 12th. So on the 14th, all of a sudden, we get this CrowdStrike, which is the firm hired by the DNC to watch all this stuff. It's up. There's evidence of an intrusion here, and there's evidence that it was the Russians. And the next day, wouldn't you believe it, Guccifer 2.0 said, yep, we can confirm that there was an intrusion, and we did it. And we're working for WikiLeaks. Give me a break, right?
Yeah, interesting.
So WikiLeaks released this stuff on the 22nd of July, okay? And the sorrowful thing for the DNC was that this was just 3 days, or 2 days actually, before the Democratic National Convention began. And so they scurried around and said, how are we gonna explain this? And my God, what's Bernie gonna do when he finds out, you know, how? And they decide, well, we're well prepared. We could say the Russians did it. All we need is the complete cooperation by the so-called mainstream media. And if we can do that, we can have a magnificent, remember that magnificent obsession? Well, this would be a magnificent distraction. It worked. No one paid any attention to what was in the content of the email. Was always, why did Russia do it? This Russia is act of war, see? Yeah. So now what's flowed out of that is very mischievous.
It is.
I mean, right now we have the President of the United States saying, I don't know, you know, could be Russia, could be, you know, all he has to do is ask his CIA director to find the people working for John Brennan in this special cyber unit that he created and ask them, okay?
Exactly. Exactly. It's that simple at the end of the day.
How were you, so this data the data that was analyzed, how did you have access to it? And is this something that's just available to the public?
Well, you know, it's not just available to the public, and that's a really interesting story. It's not only veteran intelligence professionals for sanity that are interested in the truth, it's independent people. You know, people who have experience in these areas. There was no real incentive for major media to look into this, or even investigative reporters. And so it fell to a fellow who calls himself forensicator, okay? Somehow he got the key to what Lucifer 2.0 was talking about, and he unlocked the metadata, okay? Okay, now this is the key. What did the metadata show? The metadata showed that on the 5th of July last year, information was copied onto an external storage device like a thumb drive at a speed that was so fast it could never have been a hack. It had to be a copy and a leak. And that's, you know, physics and the capabilities of the internet, the known capabilities at that time, they don't lie. And so we said, wow, let's see if we can research this. And so we have in-house capability. It won't quit. We have Bill Binney, Kurt Wiebe, and the others. You know, they're previous NSA technical directors and all kinds of stuff like that.
I would trust their expertise in this matter a little bit.
I certainly would before James Comey.
So what the data said was this idea that when it was copied at a speed that could have only come from having a direct connection to that server, that computer.
And not only that, the metadata also showed where it was done. Guess where?
Where?
The Eastern time zone.
Ooh.
Not of Russia. Ooh. Not Vladivostok, or Washington, or Bangor, or Miami, the Eastern time zone, Eastern Daylight Time. You know, that's pretty incriminating too.
It is very incriminating.
And besides that, there was a format used, a kind of a template, which experts could see was superimposed on the data. Whether that template was superimposed then or before then, it was obviously an attempt to implicate the Russians because it came from a well-known Russian template. So those three things. The most important is the download, the copying speed, because it couldn't be downloaded from the internet at that speed. Everyone agrees on that, okay? Now, even the scientists, some say, well, maybe now they could. Well, it doesn't matter if they can now. What matters if they could in July of last year.
Why? Look, this is now you released this memo and all this information. VIPS released this. I want to say last week. Now it's been probably about a week and a half or so, 2 weeks. Why has it been kind of mum? Like, we haven't heard much. Like, you'd think the Republicans would jump all over this fact, you know, and you'd think that even, you know, even elements of the media might jump all over this, even to try to debunk you, even to try to attack you for it. Why have we not heard a peep out of anyone?
Well, that's coming. We see it coming. Okay. Now, I don't know, you know, I am happy that the Republican politicians haven't seized on this, because this is not a partisan issue. This is physics, okay? This is the capability of the internet, okay? And we've been saying all along that were it to have been a hack, it would have been intercepted by the NSA, and there's no reason on God's creation that the NSA wouldn't be able to divulge that, because all those collection means were revealed by Ed Snowden.
That's true. That's very true. So they couldn't reveal it. Well, if it wasn't a hack, then they had nothing to reveal, and then that, ooh, that's interesting. That's curious.
Now, the Vault 7 WikiLeaks leak, I guess, or whatever you would have put it, that came out that talked about how there were ways to use data to make it look as if it was either Russian or Chinese or wherever. Really, it said wherever, that you can mask things for security reasons and all of that. Do you think a similar tool could have been used in this case? And at the end of the day, how is there any way to determine that for certain? Is there any way to know for sure whether or not that information that looks like it's coming from somewhere else is actually from there?
John Brennan, the head of the CIA, created a whole directorate hundreds of people for cyber warfare 5 years ago, okay? We know now what they were doing because someone, Julian Assange says a contractor, leaked all this stuff. Julia says this is a leak of such moment that it rivals Ed Snowden's leak in 2013. Now, yeah, you could find that out. All you have to do is get a CIA director that has the intestinal fortitude to say, hey guys, I'm going to put you under oath and put you on a lie detector to see which ones of you were involved in this. Now, I can't say they were, but it's very, very coincidental that they had this capability based on CIA documents now to obfuscate. That's the word they used. Pretty, that's a 35-cent word. Obfuscate. And what does that mean? To disguise the origin of a hack and then to impute responsibility to, well, someone speaking one of 5 languages: Arabic, Farsi, Chinese, Korean, and Russian.
Ooh,
in other words, you could leave telltale signs there in Cyrillic, the Russian language. Whoa.
One of the biggest sparks that ignited the Russiagate election scandal we now find ourselves in was the alleged hacking of DNC emails by a certain murky character with alleged Russian spy connections named Guccifer 2.0. But a year later, the group, Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity, who previously stood firm against faulty intelligence leading up to the war in Iraq, have analyzed the DNC breach and are absolutely certain about one thing. There was no Guccifer 2.0 hack, and there wasn't an initial hack either. According to former CIA analyst Ray McGovern, the data breach used as a pretext for today's Russiagate pandemonium was actually a simple USB flash drive job and carried out by someone on the inside. Why, you might ask? Well, let's find out.
So I'm kind of getting this clear because this is I think one of the biggest groundbreaking stories of the summer. What you've uncovered. So essentially, what you're saying is that in response to the WikiLeaks, in response to what Julian Assange got delivered to him, and the initial DNC, is that the DNC then came up with the Guccifer idea to kind of pour water on the fire, control the flow of information and who was responsible for it, essentially. And so that would be the bad actors would come from the DNC, or is it something much deeper than that?
Well, we could talk about the deep state. And we know that John Brennan and his lieutenants are working very closely with the Hillary campaign. I mean, look at Mike, what's his name?
Mike Morrell.
Mike Morrell, those guys. So, but that's inference, that's analysis. That's what we do as all source analysts. We look at what Putin said to Megyn Kelly. We look at other things that are on the public record, okay? Now, that doesn't matter really when we're talking about technical issues of this scope. All we know is that, all we need to know is that the forensics, somebody did the forensics.
Right.
And finally they got the forensics, and what James Comey and the others have to do is to find out, well, is this true? Let's take a look at the DNC computers. Where are they? Do they have cobwebs on them at the bottom? Hello? This is really a farce, and it needs to be investigated.
It definitely does.
And let me ask you, because this is the part of it that's always bothered me, just from an administrative end, was the idea when Debbie Wasserman Schultz was asked about it, she said, well, the FBI never called us, nobody ever called us, nobody ever talked to us about anything. That is, because that seems so unbelievably non-standard that the head of the DNC has hacked any act of war from a foreign country and doesn't even pick up the phone and say, hey, FBI. Does that seem normal? Is that standard? Is there something I'm missing about the great, hill, that there's a way to do things?
Let me put it this way, it's normal for the deep state.
It's normal for the
certain things you don't ask, certain things you understand. If I were to be asked, did James Comey refuse to examine those computers? He could have got a warrant easy as pie.
Yeah.
Did he refuse to do that because he knew that if he sent his specialists in to look at what happened to the DNC computers, they would have come back and said, Mr. Comey, you won't believe it. We found an operation so expensive, so intricate, we can't figure it out. CrowdStrike can't figure it out. Should we ask NSA about it? And he would have to say, no. Don't ask NSA.
Don't go any further. Right.
Don't go any further.
So I think he was complicit in the whole thing. That explains why he didn't do the forensics.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. Well, I want to finish up and just ask you, your organization, VIPS, you guys really came to fame, truthfully, in 2003 with your memo against the Iraq War and the rush to judgment to it. now we see this kind of this hacking narrative, putting all this onus on Russia. Everything's anti-Russia, anti-Russia. They're out to get us. They're arming the Taliban, which is ridiculous. Do you see the parallels from 2003 in the rush to Iraq to the rush to Russia?
Well, in terms of the adulteration of intelligence,
Yes.
Unfortunately, yes. We watched it go from deliberate, not obfuscation, deliberate pandering to the administration. Fraud, okay? Not a mistake, fraud. There were no weapons of mass destruction, and the good guys knew that, and of course we could see that from the outside, okay? There were no ties between Saddam Hussein and Al-Qaeda, and yet 69% of the American people, before we invaded, believed that Saddam Hussein had something to do with 9/11, mind you, because of his ties with Al-Qaeda. A masterful mainstream media operation in cooperation with these people who want to make a war in Iraq. That's what we're seeing now. Now, I have to say there was one exception in all this time. 2003 we know about now. In 2007, there was an honest manager of intelligence who ran an estimate saying Iran had stopped working on its nuclear weapons at the end of 2003 and had not resumed work on that. That's big, okay?
Yeah.
That was honest, and that is the only estimate in my experience, and I've been around a while, that played a huge role in stopping a war. Wow. Because Bush and Cheney were hell-bent on stopping a war in their last year in office, 2008. So we have to say that, there are doubtless some honest analysts left in the CIA and other parts of the intelligence community. They have been completely suppressed. Most of them, I suppose, have quit now. But there is hope still that they'll come to the fore. And when people leak, as they have with respect to the Vault 7 stuff, and when we have independent forensic people who feel so strongly about the truth that they do their homework, well, then there's hope.
There is always hope. Thank you so much, Ray, always coming on and bringing us a little hope amidst all the insanity of this world. Thank you.
Thank you so much.